Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Donor Centric Approach. This podcast is brought to you by MRP Donor Development, where we keep our donors at the center of everything that we do. And this podcast is also brought to you by our friends and sponsors at Stellar Web Systems, the nonprofit tech solution. As always, I am your host, Orlando Barros, and I know that I'm super biased, but let me tell you, we have a great show in store for you today because we're going to be talking about clarity. Clarity creates unity, especially around defining and refining your nonprofit's mission. So if you have ever felt like your fundraising efforts are scattered, or if your donors just don't seem to get what you do, then today's episode is for you. Side note, if you are an experienced development director or have been leading your organization for quite some time, and you just feel like you can always use the help in telling the story, what you do in a clear and more concise way, this episode is also for you. Because here's the reality. If our mission is not clear, then fundraising and the developing of the relationships to continue to gather these funds are always going to feel like an uphill battle, like we're fighting against the current. And we want to minimize that. That's why we have this episode today. We're going to be discussing and breaking down how we can refine our mission for our nonprofit or our ministry in a way that makes our fundraising efforts easier, more effective, and therefore a whole lot more fun. So we're going to be sharing the biggest mistakes nonprofits make when defining their mission. We then will be discussing a simple 3-step framework for sharpening our mission so that it speaks directly to our donors, because that's what really matters when raising the money. And then at the end, we're going to leave you with 3 actionable takeaways that you can start using right away, immediately, and implementing those in your fundraising efforts. So again, if you're a nonprofit leader, a ministry leader, a fundraising professional, or an executive, this episode is going to give you the tools that you need to strengthen your messaging and make fundraising a whole lot easier. So without further ado, let's jump in. Let's talk about and start with why your mission or mission clarity is super critical for your fundraising efforts. Because here's the deal. A vague mission leads to vague fundraising results. And the opposite is also true. A clear mission is going to directly lead to clear fundraising results. We talk about this all the time in our program in the way that we help clients. You can only count what you can measure. So understanding your metrics is important. And in the same way, understanding your mission and what you do in a clear and concise manner is important, because that's the way that your donors are going to receive it. That's the way your donors are going to see it. So if your mission statement is broad or too broad and unclear, what we're doing is that we're forcing our donors to figure out why the work that we do matters. We know why it matters. We know why it's important. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here trying to raise funds for it. But what we do when we're not clear is that, again, we're forcing our donors to figure out why our work is important. instead of making it super obvious to them. And you'll be surprised how often this happens because I see it all the time. Nonprofits are trying to be, for lack of a better term, everything to everyone, or at least do more of what they should do stuff that's outside really what their core mission is. The question that I always bring them back to is this part of our mission? Does this fit our mission? When we try to do the opposite and we try to do too much, both in the way that we express our mission, that we tell the way that we do our story, and the programs that we run and that we implement, when we try to do that, we end up with a message to our donors that's too general, way too general. And when our message is not concise, it does not inspire or move people to action. It doesn't move people to give. So let's think about it this way. When someone asks us, what does your nonprofit do? Can you answer that question in one clear sentence that immediately sparks interest, that makes people intrigued, or that could even move people to want to find out more because they might want to give? If the answer is no, then don't worry. Take a deep breath. You're in the right place. Also, you're not alone. This happens to a lot of nonprofits. And I've had this same conversation with some of the guests that have come on our show. If you listen to the last two episodes, my conversations with John Bishop from Forge and Dan Belergen from Mission Driven Catholic, both of them started with a broad vision that they then had to narrow down and focus in order to gain momentum. For example, big props to John Bishop at Forge, because he realized that what they do wasn't just about men's formation. Really, what they do is about forming men into the husbands, fathers, and leaders they were created to be. That shift alone changed the way they spoke to donors. They spoke to supporters, and therefore it led to stronger and better and larger fundraising results. Dan Belergen from Mission Driven Catholic, he saw that Catholic schools shouldn't just be about educating children. They needed to be seen as centers of evangelization in order to inspire support from donors. And again, when you see it that way, you're telling a whole different story. You're showing a better side, a clearer side of what it is that you do. Refining our mission isn't changing our work. What it does is that it changes how we connect with those who support our efforts, with our donors. And that's what we're going to discuss today. That's the essence of this episode. If you're struggling with this is what we're going to help you overcome. And the way that we're going to do that is by talking about this simple 3-step mission refinement framework that we have for you. So how do we refine our nonprofit's mission, our ministry's mission, so that it fuels fundraising instead of holding it back, or instead of just capping it at a certain level? Let's go ahead and walk through this 3-step framework that's really, in reality, super simple. And what it does is going to help us clarify our mission and, once again, make our fundraising efforts easier. Here's the first step. Step number one. We want to define the problem that we solve in one sentence. What happens is too many nonprofits focus on what they do instead of focusing on why it matters. Another way to say this when you're talking to donors about the great work that you do is that you focus on sharing with them what you need instead of sharing with them the way in which their support can change and transform lives. We're saying the same thing, but in a way that inspires mission, in a way that matters. Donors don't give to problems. Donors give to solutions. So let me walk you through an example of a weak way of saying or of stating a mission. Here's a way I wouldn't recommend. We provide leadership training for young men. Great. Awesome. Doesn't move me to give. A better, stronger, more effective way to say this would be, we equip young men with the leadership skills they need to build strong families and strong communities. Again, it's beyond what you do. It's telling what you do and why what it is that you do matters, why it is important. And when it comes down, the impact that that's making or that will make in your fundraising efforts is night and day. Because a well-defined problem creates urgency and it helps donors immediately connect to the need, and it inspires within them a desire to want to solve the need or to help you solve that need. Does that make sense? Step number two. Step number one, again, defining our problem in one sentence, or the problem that we solve in one sentence. Step number two, identifying the core transformation that happens in our mission. So a way to sort of think about this step would be asking ourselves, what changes because of the work that we do? You can even take it a step further and say, if we weren't here, who would do the work that we do? And would that cause the same change that happens when we do our work? So again, giving you examples of a weak way to say this in your mission, or a weak way to explain your mission, and a strong way to do it. Here's a way that I wouldn't use. We run food programs for families. Awesome. Way too general. Doesn't move me. Doesn't move your donors to give. A stronger, more effective way to say the same thing would be, we ensure families never have to choose between rent and putting food on the table. Life-changing. Even my saying that, I'm sure, caused a shift within you as you listened. So imagine yourself in the shoes of your prospect, in the shoes of your donor. When you tell what you do in a story-like way, it becomes a lot more impactful. Because when it comes down to fundraising, donors are not going to fund activities. the food programs that you run for families. What they want to fund is transformations. What they want to do is make sure their support is changing people's lives. And when you make that same shift in your messaging, fundraising suddenly becomes easier. Suddenly it becomes something that you want to do more often. Clearing the way by making the thing that you do best clearer in your head, and therefore clearer and easier for a donor to support. Tell what you do in a story that shows how you're changing life, that shows the changes that take place in your community because of what you do, and people will support it. Step number 3. Again, number 1, defining the problem we solve in one sentence. Number 2, identifying our core transformation. Number 3, aligning our messaging with our donors' priorities. And if you've been listening to the podcast for the last few weeks, as we have started, or if you've been to any one of our webinars, or if you worked with me one-on-one, this is not going to sound unfamiliar to you because I say this all the time. We want to know our audience. Just because someone gave a $5,000 unrestricted gift to you, and another person gave another $5,000 unrestricted gift to you, does not mean that they gave because of the exact same reason. And it's our job to find out why, to get to know our donors. This is why relationships are important, right? What matters to you as an organization is super important. But really understanding and knowing what matters to our donors, that's what's going to drive and increase the support and the giving to your organization. We want to speak our donors' language. So, like, for example, instead of saying something along the lines of, we run after-school STEM programs, you can do the same thing in a much stronger way by saying, we help underserved kids gain the skills they need to break the cycle of poverty. And who wouldn't want to give to that? You do that by running the after-school STEM programs. But what you really are doing is giving these kids who are underserved, underprivileged, the ability to gain the skills they need to no longer be in poverty, to break that cycle generationally for their family. Again, think about the impact that your words are making or having on your donors. The more aligned your messaging is with what your donors value, the easier fundraising becomes. And when fundraising is easier, you're going to love it even more. It becomes a whole lot more fun. So now that you have these 3-step framework in mind, right? Defining the problem that we solve in one sentence, identifying our core transformation, and aligning our messaging with our donors' priorities. Then let's talk about the 3 actionable takeaways that you can start implementing right now, today. And here are those 3 things that you can do today. 3-step framework, 3 things you can do today. Actionable takeaway number 1. Refine your mission statement using this very 3-step framework we just discussed. Write it down, trim the fluff using the 3-step framework, and then test it on someone who isn't as familiar with your work. It could be another parent, a cheerleading practice or another coach on the local YMCA soccer team, right? Or maybe a buddy from church. Run it by them, test it on them, and see if it immediately resonates with them. If it makes them intrigued, if it makes them want to know more, or how, or why you do the things that you do, right? Actionable takeaway number 2. And this is a little bit more time consuming. Audit your fundraising materials and your website, particularly your donation page, but I'm sure there's a lot on your website that needs to be updated in order to move people to give. You're not alone, happens to the majority of us. Have a look at your website. Have a look at the last few emails that you sent to your donors, the last few appeals, and your overall annual campaign messaging. And ask yourself this question. Is our mission coming across super clear, crystal clear? You can even take it a step further and ask yourself, would a brand new prospect understand our impact in 10 seconds or less, almost immediately? And if not, then take it back to number 1 and start refining the way that you tell the story of what you do, your mission statement, and everything that you're saying, and in the communication pieces that you're sending to your donors. Actionable takeaway number 3, test your new messaging with your actual donors. If you're doing this work correctly, I am sure that in the next few weeks, you're going to have a donor meeting coming up in which you're going to be either renewing a one-time gift, asking for an increase of a monthly donation, or asking for your next major gift. When you are in these meetings, I want to encourage you to try framing your mission in this new way and see how it resonates with your donors. It's going to stir in your donors an even greater zeal for what you do, because they can continue to see in an even clearer way how they can continue to be true partners in the mission that you're trying to accomplish, in the lives that you're changing by what you do. At the end of the day, belief alone is not enough. You got to build those relationships to bring the funds, right? We're also talking about beliefs plus relationships equals funds. But those relationships only get stronger the more you can continue to get your donors to support you. And the way you tell the story of what you do is super critical and important in doing this. Remember, clarity creates unity, both in your team members, in your board members, in what you do in your head, but also in your donors and in the way that you're communicating with them. You want to be one. And the clearer your mission, the more united you're going to be. At the end of the day, this whole thing of fundraising and developing gifts isn't just about or simply asking for money. It's about telling a compelling story of what it is that you do in a way that moves and inspires people to give to you. And if you feel like your donors are not responding to this in the way that you believe they should, then that's a pretty good sign that you probably need to start refining your mission and the way that you share it with others. Again, the clearer your message, the stronger the fundraising results. I hope that's helpful, and I hope that made sense. If you have found this episode extremely helpful, and if you found that what I'm saying is resonating with what's going on currently in your organization, I want to just humbly ask you to consider reaching out to us and connecting with us. I want to help you refine your nonprofit's mission in a way that matters to your supporters. If that's something that's interesting to you, I want to encourage you to there's a link on the notes for the show where there's my Calendly link, and you can go ahead and schedule a free 45-minute strategy session with us. There's also one on our website. Our website is mrpdonordev.com. That's MRPDONORDEV for donordevelopment.com. At the very least, I want to encourage you to follow the podcast along. And if you found this episode helpful, share it with someone who you believe would benefit from listening to it. And I just want to encourage you to continue to join us each and every week for more of these stories, more episodes of more guests are where you are and how they're changing the way that they do things. I'm incredibly humbled and grateful for each of you that you're part of this journey with us. From the bottom of my heart, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for listening. And I do hope to continue to be with you along and continue to have you be part of this journey. Again, thanks so much. Remember to keep your donors at the center of everything that you do, and you will see results. You're the best. Thank you so much. Take care, and God bless. 1,